Hi everybody and welcome back to the Little Miss Funeral YouTube channel. The inspiration for today's video comes from an Ashley who recently commented on one of my videos asking if I could explain different final dispositions and the pros and cons between them. Now I just want to say for the purpose of this video I really am going to try to make it kind of a brief, just broad description of these different options, and please keep in mind that when I am talking about the pros and cons between them, these are my own personal opinions, so they may not line up with yours and they may not even line up with other funeral professionals out there. So let's start with the final disposition that we are all very familiar with, and that is burial. When we bury a dead body, we are actually taking their body intact and placing it directly into the ground. And there are a couple of different options that are available when we are doing a burial. The first one is going to be more of your traditional burial, which is what we think of when Grandma and Grandpa had passed away, and within our Western culture, kind of that tradition that we are used to, which is dealing with an embalmed body, placing it in some sort of a metal casket inside of a concrete vault, inside of a traditional cemetery setting. I think that there are pros to doing this kind of a burial. For instance, if you are dealing with a traditional cemetery, a lot of times they're going to give you memorialization options that are available to you, like headstones and markers. As a funeral director, I just think that there's a lot of history within cemeteries, and I find it so interesting as part of my job to be able to walk around these cemeteries and see these names on these headstones and to see these dates and to just kind of think about the lives that have been lived and these people that have come before me. Now, a huge con to a traditional funeral is that we are placing all these chemicals and materials directly into the earth, which is not really a green option. And let's also be honest, eventually, if every single person were to decide on a traditional burial, you are going to eventually run out of room. Now, staying in line with burial, but going in the other direction, we have green burials, which are going to be done in more of a memorial park and a natural setting. So in those situations, embalming is not done. You're taking a body naturally and you're either placing them in a shroud or you're placing them in some kind of a container that is going to naturally decompose once you bury it into the ground. A huge pro of a natural burial is that you are not putting these chemicals and these materials into the earth. And honestly, I really can't think of any cons. I like natural burials. I wish that I had these options more readily available in the community in which I live and I work, because I just think that it's such a cool option. It's such a beautiful option that can be offered to families, but unfortunately it's just not a super popular option when it comes to where I live. Now, sticking within the whole cemetery idea as well, you also have above ground burial options such as mausoleums. Now, a mausoleum is going to fall in line more with the traditional burial because, at least in the area in which I live and I work, mausoleums are going to require families to embalm their loved one and have a sealer casket. Once again, when it comes to embalming, your state laws are often not going to require it. In New York State, there is no law that says you have to be embalmed. But if you purchase this above ground burial option, cemeteries typically do require it. A pro behind a mausoleum is that you are actually giving your family a physical place to go and visit if they feel the need to have that option. I know that not every person out there feels the need to physically be able to go someplace, but I know that I find that very therapeutic. If I'm having a difficult day, or if it's Mother's Day, Father's Day, a birthday, if it's a special occasion, it's nice to be able to have a physical place to go to where you can spend time with your loved one and you know that their physical body is there. A con that I see with above ground burial options like mausoleum is that it is a man-made structure, and if something were to happen with Mother Nature, like a tornado or a hurricane, obviously those structures structures can break and they can fall apart, and then you're left with these human remains that don't have a home. And no matter what final disposition you do end up choosing, it's important to remember that these are people that we're dealing with, and they still deserve respect and dignity with their human remains. Now let's take a little journey to the other side of final disposition and talk about cremation. Cremation is the reduction of human remains by flame. So when you're dealing with cremated remains, that's really what you're dealing with, is the remains of a human skeleton. I do have a video on my YouTube channel that I will link below where I answer some of your cremation questions with a good friend of mine by the name of Matt Roberts, who is a crematory operator. So if you're interested in watching that video and learning a little bit more about the cremation process, you can always click the link below after this one. There are so many pros when it comes to cremation, in my opinion. First and foremost, it is less expensive than a traditional burial. Secondly, it allows families so many more options when it comes to what they are planning on doing with the cremated remains. When you're dealing with a burial, you are placing the entire body in one area. With cremation, cremation is a process. You are taking human remains and reducing them to cremated remains, but then you still can do something with them. You can bury cremated remains. You can scatter cremated remains. You can even take cremated remains home with you or make memorial jewelry. I mean, there are so many options out there if you want to become part of a coral reef, or if you want to take cremated remains and shoot them up into space. You can Google probably anything and do that with cremated remains. Now, a negative that I see with cremation, which may be something that people watching this didn't even think about, but it's something unfortunately that does happen every now and then, is the abandonment of said cremains. I have seen this happen. Unfortunately, I don't know always the reasons behind it, but once the cremation process is complete, families have sometimes chosen not to pick up their loved ones. So they stay at the funeral home or they stay at the crematory. I just think that that's a really sad reality, is once somebody's cremated, it is still their body. It should still be treated with respect and dignity, and unfortunately, once, you know, the physical body is no longer here, people sometimes, I think, have that mentality where everything's over and we don't have to do anything additional. Now, staying within that idea of cremation, we are now being introduced to a new process called Aqua Meishan, or alkaline hydrolysis, which unfortunately is not legal in every single state, which I think is the main con about this process. Alkaline hydrolysis is going to be the reduction of human remains. Instead of by flame, such as traditional cremation, it's going to be the reduction of human remains by water. Now, a huge pro behind this is that it is more of a green option. No greenhouse gases are emitted within this process. If you are somebody out there who is very aware of the environment and wants to have a green final disposition, but maybe it's not right for you to have a green burial option, alkaline hydrolysis or Aqua Meishan could be a great option for you. Even though it is currently not legal in all 50 states, there are ways around it. For instance, I learned from a friend of mine by the name of Melissa Unfred, who's known as the Modern Mortician. She is a mortician within Texas who is a huge advocate for green burial options, and anytime she has a family who wants this Aqua Meishan, she will actually fly the deceased person to a state in which it is legal so that process can be performed, which sometimes that can be a little bit more of a pricey option because you are dealing with a flight, but at the end of the day, cremation and Aqua Meishan are going to be less expensive than traditional burial, once again, which puts those in the pro category. I think that talking about final dispositions can be such a funny thing. As humans, we are very very aware of our mortality, whether or not we want to admit that. And because we are aware of our mortality, we can logically think about what we want to happen to our bodies when we pass away. Regardless, it's important to be able to talk about your options and to make certain that you have all of the steps in place so you know that when you pass away, your wishes are going to be taken care of. Once again, I wanted to thank Ashley for being the inspiration behind this video. I know that it was hopefully more of a quick video because, let's be honest, we could probably talk about these different options and the pros and cons, really digging into the nitty-gritty of it for quite some time. If you liked this video, you can always give it a thumbs up. Please do not forget to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on any videos that I put out in the future. And thank you all so much for watching. I will see you all next time.